Leave before it's too late. Ezulwini Nursing College, nestled at the foot of the majestic Drakensberg Mountains, was an institution with a rich history. Built in the late 1800s, the college had seen many generations of nurses graduate from its hallowed halls. But there was something else it had seen, something dark and mysterious, whispered about only in hushed tones after sunset. The whispers began with stories of the old ward. This building, now abandoned, had once been a quarantine zone during a cholera outbreak decades ago. The nurses of that time had tirelessly cared for the infected until they themselves succumbed to the disease. It was said that their spirits still roamed the corridors, their unfinished work keeping them tethered to the world of the living. Thandeka Zulu, a second-year nursing student, didn't believe in ghosts. A strong-willed, practical woman, she had little patience for superstition. Yet, as she sat with her friends in the dormitory common room one chilly evening, the conversation inevitably veered toward the rumors surrounding the old ward. "You're telling me you've never felt anything strange in the old ward?" asked Loretta Mackay's, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the small fireplace. "Nope," Thandeka replied, leaning back in her chair. "I've passed by there many times during clinicals. It's just an old building with a creaky floor and bad plumbing." Loretta shivered, wrapping her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You're braver than me, Thandi. I wouldn't go near that place, especially not at night." Zolan Gubain, another student, leaned in conspiratorially. "You've heard about the matron's ghost, right? The one who still checks on the patients even though she's been dead for 50 years. Thandeka rolled her eyes but couldn't help the uneasy feeling that crept up her spine. She was about to retort when their conversation was interrupted by the dormitory door slamming open. A gust of cold air rushed in, and for a moment, the lights flickered. Sibinjal Dlamini, their bubbly friend who had been out on a late-night errand, rushed in, her face pale and eyes wide. "You won't believe what I just saw," she gasped, clutching her side as though she had run all the way back. "What?" Loretta asked, her voice rising in fear. "I swear. I saw someone in the old ward. I was passing by, and there was a light in one of the windows. And I heard someone crying." Thandeka frowned. "Are you sure? No one is allowed in there." "I know what I saw," Sibinjal insisted. "We have to check it out." Thandeka shook her head, determined to stay logical. "It's probably just one of the security guards. Maybe they forgot to turn off the lights." But even as she said it, something gnawed at her curiosity. What if there was something more to these stories? Something she had dismissed too quickly. The next morning, word spread like wildfire through the college. Sibinjal's story had taken on a life of its own, growing with each retelling. Some claimed she had seen the matron's ghost, while others whispered about strange noises in the night. By lunchtime, it was the only topic of conversation in the cafeteria. Students huddled in groups, speculating about what might be lurking in the old ward. Sitting with her friends, Thandeka found herself annoyed at how easily everyone was falling into the trap of fear. "I can't believe you're all scared over nothing," she muttered as she poked at her meal. Loretta glanced around nervously before whispering, "You wouldn't be so dismissive if you saw it for yourself." Zola, always up for a challenge, leaned forward with a smirk. "Why don't we go see for ourselves then?" Thandeka raised an eyebrow. "What, now?" "Not now, but tonight," Zola said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "We'll go to the old ward after lights out. If there's nothing there, we can finally put these rumors to rest." Loretta paled at the suggestion. "Are you crazy? I'm not going anywhere near that place after dark." "I'm in," Sibinjal said suddenly, her earlier fear replaced by a sense of resolve. I want to know what I saw. And I don't want to be scared anymore. Thandeka hesitated, torn between her skepticism and her growing curiosity. She glanced around at the other students, watching how fear had gripped them all. Maybe, just maybe, if they went and found nothing, she could prove once and for all that the ghost stories were just that, stories. Fine, she said at last. We'll go tonight. But I'm telling you, there's nothing there. The night crept in slowly, the cool air thick with tension as the four friends gathered outside the dormitory. They had waited until the rest of the campus was asleep, ensuring no one would stop them. Lerato was still reluctant, but Zola had convinced her to come along. Think of it as an adventure, Zola had said with a grin. Besides, we have Thandeka here to protect us. Thandeka rolled her eyes but couldn't shake the growing sense of foreboding as they approached the old ward. The building loomed before them, its once grand architecture now worn and weathered by time. The windows were dark, the paint peeling from the walls. It looked abandoned, haunted, even. Are you sure about this? Lerato whispered, clutching Subbanjal's arm. It'll be fine, Thandeka said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. She pushed open the rusty gate, the creak echoing through the silent night. The group made their way through the overgrown courtyard, stepping carefully over the broken tiles and debris. The old ward was eerily quiet, save for the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. When they reached the entrance, Zola took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The hinges groaned in protest, and for a moment, none of them moved. Well, Thandeka said, trying to lighten the mood. We are here. Let's look around and prove that there's nothing to be afraid of. But as they stepped inside, a sudden chill settled over them. The air was thick and oppressive, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Do you feel that? Subbanjal asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's just cold, Thandeka said, though she felt the same heaviness in the air. Let's stick together and check out the rooms. They moved cautiously through the hallways, their footsteps echoing on the cracked linoleum floors. Each room they passed was dark and empty, the remnants of old hospital beds and equipment gathering dust. But when they reached the end of the hall, they saw something that made their hearts skip a beat, a soft light flickering under one of the doors. That's where I saw it, Subbanjal whispered, her voice trembling. Thandeka swallowed hard. It's probably just a flashlight someone left behind. Let's check it out. She pushed open the door, her hands shaking despite her resolve. Inside, they found an old ward, the beds neatly lined up against the walls as though waiting for patients. The light they had seen came from a single, dim lantern sitting on a nearby table. But that wasn't the only thing in the room. Sitting on one of the beds, her back to them, was a figure dressed in an old-fashioned nurse's uniform. Lerato gasped, stumbling back. It's her. The matron. The figure didn't move, didn't react to their presence. It simply sat there, its head bowed as though lost in thought. Thandeka's mouth went dry. It's probably just someone messing with us, she whispered, though even she didn't believe it. Zola, ever the brave one, stepped forward. Hey, she called out. Whoever you are, this isn't funny. But the figure remained still. Subbanjal clutched Thandeka's arm. We need to leave. Now. Before they could move, the figure began to turn slowly. As it did, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lantern and plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as the room grew pitch black. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the four friends, their hearts pounding in unison. Zola, Thandeka whispered, reaching out for her friend in the dark. Where are you? I'm here. Zola's voice came from somewhere nearby, but it was trembling. What was that? Before anyone could answer, a soft voice echoed through the room, a woman's voice, low and haunting.
"Why have you come here?"
it asked, the words carrying a weight that sent shivers down their spines. Larota whimpered, clutching Subbanjile. "We need to get out of here." But the door had slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. The voice came again, closer this time.
"Leave before it's too late."
Thandeka, her hands shaking, fumbled for her phone, hoping to use its flashlight to find their way out. But when she turned on the flashlight, her hand froze mid-air. The beam of light fell on the figure, now fully facing them. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and her face pale as though drained of all life. Her nurse's uniform was tattered, the once white fabric stained with age and grime. The four friends were paralyzed with fear, their eyes locked on the figure. It stood slowly, moving with a grace that seemed unnatural. As the ghostly woman took a step toward them, Thandeka's mind raced, struggling to reconcile what she was seeing. "Who are you?" Thandeka stammered, her voice barely audible. The woman's eyes fixed on her, empty and sorrowful.
"I am Agent Dube,"
the figure said softly.
"This place, it is not safe for you. You must leave, or you will suffer the same fate as those before you."
Subbanjile gasped, her fingers tightening on Thandeka's arm. "What do you mean? What happened here?" The matron's form flickered, as though the energy that bound her to this world was fading.
"During the cholera outbreak, many died, and some were left behind,"
she whispered.
"They still linger here, unable to find peace."
Laroto's eyes welled with tears. "Why can't you leave? Why can't you move on?" The ghost shook her head.
"Our work was never finished. We cared for the sick until we fell ill ourselves. But now, we are trapped, watching over a hospital with no patients, waiting for someone to release us."
Thandeka's heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of terror and pity rising within her. "How can we help you?" The matron's figure flickered again, her form growing fainter.
"You cannot. We are beyond saving. But you must leave this place before the others find you. They are not as merciful as I."
The air in the room grew colder, the oppressive feeling intensifying. The walls seemed to close in around them, and for the first time, Thandeka truly believed that they were in danger. "Let's go," Zola whispered urgently, backing toward the door. "We need to get out of here." But the door remained shut, and no matter how hard they pulled, it wouldn't budge. The matron's form continued to fade.
"Go, now,"
she said, her voice barely audible as her figure began to dissolve into mist. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside, followed by the sound of footsteps, many footsteps. The friends exchanged terrified glances. "We have to get out of here," Thandeka said, panic finally gripping her. "How?" Subbanjile cried, her voice breaking. "The door won't open." As the footsteps grew closer, Thandeka's eyes darted around the room, searching for another way out. There, near the back of the room, was a small window, barely large enough for them to squeeze through. "Over here," she shouted, running toward the window. Zola didn't hesitate, grabbing a chair and smashing it against the glass. The window shattered, and the cold night air rushed in. "Come on. We don't have much time." One by one, they scrambled through the broken window, their hearts racing as they squeezed through the tight space. Thandeka was the last to climb out, her pulse pounding in her ears. Just as she slid through the window frame, she heard the door behind her burst open. She didn't dare look back. The sun was just beginning to rise as the four friends collapsed on the lawn outside the old ward, their chests heaving as they caught their breath. The cold morning air was a sharp contrast to the suffocating atmosphere they had just escaped. For a moment, none of them spoke. They were too shaken, too overwhelmed by what had just happened. Finally, Laroto broke the silence. That was real, wasn't it?" she asked, her voice trembling. Thandeka nodded slowly, her hands still trembling. "I think so. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't just a story." Sibangile sat up, hugging her knees to her chest. "We need to tell someone. We can't be the only ones who've experienced this." "But who would believe us?" Zola asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "The faculty will think we're making it up." Thandeka's mind was racing. If the matron's warning was real, then they were in danger, serious danger. But how could they convince anyone to take them seriously? And more importantly, how could they help the spirits trapped in the old ward? "We have to figure this out," Thandeka said firmly, standing up. "We can't just let this go. Those spirits, they're suffering. And if what Matron Dubé said is true, there are others who aren't so friendly." Laroto shuddered. "What do we do? We are just students, Thandi. How can we fix this?" I hope you enjoyed the story. Share the moral lesson you've learned in the comments below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more amazing tales. Thank you for watching.